Boeing. Now, this one has obviously been a very volatile trader with all of the news in Boeing. And the market got quite a relief at the end of last week when they announced that they're taking a big write-off. And a big relief ahead of earnings, too. Okay, now, what does that mean moving forward here? I mean, the stock ran up quite a bit on this news. You know, it's amazing. They take a $4 billion charge, and the market likes that. And what it just goes to show you is the market doesn't like uncertainty. And when news comes out, most of the time, good, bad, or indifferent, the market calms down. And this is just a perfect example of that. So here's the run-up we saw in Boeing. When it ran up last week, we had talked about getting a short in there around 385, and it just never reached up there. It did touch like 382, never got up to that level we were looking at for a short. Now, for earnings, who knows, right? I would say that for earnings here, this is a total flip of the coin, bullish, bearish. I don't want to play a direction in Boeing. What I would absolutely look for is if an iron condor lined up and gave us the proper reward to risk based on the expected move, I'd be all over that. But in terms of, good, bad, or indifferent, this one I think is too tough because there's too much news out there about this stock that can affect how these earnings are. So what I would really key in on here, is looking at the expected move, looking at some support resistance. We know there's big resistance up at 385 and going off of that. Okay, so let's get a whiteboard going here. Stock is trading 374. What's the expected move, everybody? Okay. Right, I'm right there with you. Which, coincidentally, guys, puts it near that big area of resistance up top. Okay, so the expected move is about 12.5 bucks. Okay, gives us an expected range of 361.50 right up to that big area of resistance we were just talking about, 386.50. Okay, let me bring this chart back in here. Okay, so here's this area of resistance we were talking about. It's from these highs back in April or so, which also was in that gap fill area, which also goes back to last October. Okay, in terms of support, definitely have the 200 there, but the 200 was some definite support here back in April. Broke it above, below, so I don't put a lot of credence in that. I also don't really put a lot of credence in the 50-day moving average. However, I would look at this big volume area right here, which, if I expand this chart, you can see this big volume area here, okay, which coincides a little bit with the bottom of that 50-day, also this support range right here. So I think support is a little bit more dicey. Okay, so let's take a look at what this iron condor is trading. Again, that is, at least right now, that is the only thing that I'd be interested in in Boeing right now. So if we're looking at, 360-ish to 387, and that's on the outsides. Okay, I'll just tell you right now, no thank you. This is kind of like what Lockheed was yesterday. Very nice, Andre. You get a golf clap also. Very, very nice there. Okay, so I'm just putting some notes up here. The 362.5, 357.5, and 385, 390 iron condor is $1.80, guys. That almost makes me want to buy it. Scott, are you talking about just the call spread on the upside? We could look at that also because of that significant resistance. However, if I break that down, you're going to see how cheap that is, unfortunately. So here's the iron condor. I don't want to sell this for $1.80. Again, I'm almost in the camp, and this would go against our reward to risk for a debit purchase. I would be more on the side of buying this iron condor than selling it. Okay, now, on the upside, if we were to look at just what Scott was talking about and selling just the call spread based on that resistance that's up there, okay, I want to get at least $1.25 for that, right? I want to get my 1-to-1 odds, especially for earnings. I got to get my 1-to-1 odds on a credit spread. It's just not there. And actually, excuse me, it's not $1.25. It would have to be upwards of $2.50. My bad. I was thinking of a $2.50 wide spread. Okay, this just goes to show you that volatility is really, really cheap, and a lot of that is because of the news that came out last week. Took so much uncertainty out of the market. All right, so, this is one I want to look at after the fact here. If we get up, if this thing comes out and it rallies and it gets up to that resistance and just kind of hangs out there, great. This, for me, is one I don't want any part of prior to earnings. I want to look post-earnings. Okay, now, unless you guys have any questions on this one, I'm going to keep the recording rolling here so we can just keep moving on and moving on because I want to get to a couple. One of them is post-earnings. Robert, you get a louder golf clap. That's the highest I've seen for light. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Okay. So what I want to go on to is one that reported earnings after the bell last night. Whirlpool. Whirlpool had great earnings. Stock rallied big time last night and sold off this morning just maybe on a bit of an overreaction because there's so much negativity in the stock here. This is what I'm looking at just from experience, guys. This one doesn't really follow methodologies that we look at. And I'm not saying that we're just, throwing darts at anything. This is one that typically you see a stock that trades on heavy volume after an earnings report, like it did last night, and now is selling off. I want to buy it and get back in. Okay? Especially right around this area here of 143-ish where it's trading, which was resistance, broke through, became support. I am looking for some short-term support here in Whirlpool. When I say short-term, I mean really short-term. I'm talking about a potential setup for this week. And in fact, if there's still some nice volatility in there, I'd almost rather sell a put spread here than buy any upside. Okay, so let's take a quick look here. I'm sure volatility is hammered, as it should be, and we can see it's down 20% this morning. Okay, but let's see if there's something maybe for this week around these strikes. All right, so I'm looking at like this 143, 141 put spread. If we could sell this for $1 here, I mean, it's a super, super wide market. Super, super wide market. That's what I'm looking at here. All right, so let me just look at this a little bit, play around with some strikes. I'll be right back. We'll look at this. We'll look at some others, okay? I'll be right back, guys.